Welcome back to Dragon Ball Dissection, the internet review series that carries an estimated 80% chance of making you question whether you've wasted decades worth of time and money on this series. The state of California now requires me to give that warning. When last we left off, Trunks had won the junior division of the 25th Tenkaichi Budokai, while Goku and the others met a pair of mysterious strangers. Now the announcer herds them all together to draw numbers for the upcoming matches. A fun little update is that they're now drawing lottery balls instead of slips of paper. Hey, why not? Another small thing that's always caught my attention is the fact that the announcer makes a point of specifying that contestants will be called in alphabetical order. It's an odd detail considering he's never gone out of his way to say that before, and in fact, as far as I can tell, the two other match lotteries we've seen don't appear to be arranged according to any pattern at all. I could be wrong about that, but they're certainly not alphabetical. Since it doesn't have any impact on the deciding of matches or the story overall, I wonder why Toriyama put it in there. I do find it amusing that this confirms Mr. Satan is categorized alphabetically under the word Mista instead of Satan. That's a fun bit of trivia for you. Because I have a predominantly English-speaking viewer base, there's one more thing I need to expound on. If you paused the video before reaching this point to check in your copy of the manga if what I said was true, you're probably very confused as to why Krillin goes immediately before Great Saiyaman and Videl well before Mr. Satan. I don't want to dive too deeply into this, but since the Japanese language contains an entirely different collection of phonemes and symbols used to represent them, it should come as no surprise that their organizational system of grouping those symbols doesn't match up with ours. Those limited symbols can use modifiers to turn them into other sounds, and adding to the confusion is that some of these characters have foreign-based words used as their names. They've been modified to align with Japanese phonemes, but are now being put back into English, which further obscures how they would be ordered. So while it seems completely impossible from an English-speaking perspective, the fact of the matter is, for example, Krillin and Gureto Saiyaman actually begin with the same basic kana, and the fact that they do is completely logical. This organizational structure is worth keeping in mind because it will impact a naming convention towards the end of the story. Nice to see that one semester of Japanese I took in college is still paying dividends. As the selection continues, Trunks and Goten realize they don't even know what their name is, and accidentally answer for a completely different person before learning their Mighty Mask. But the biggest shock of all comes when Goku and Vegeta are paired together in the first round. Remember how I said last time that the two most powerful or most important characters meeting up in the final match is a narrative convention we readily accept? The fact that it doesn't occur here should be taken as a very big red flag. Krillin has been fretting about the matchups. In fact, he even prays to God not to pit him against one of his friends. That Piccolo points out the fact that God is Dende is one of my favorite jokes in the entire series. So Krillin couldn't be happier when he's paired against random jerk-face Punter. Punter is the next in line for the uppity character who receives his comeuppance through an embarrassing beating after Idasa and Ikose, and so spends what little page space he has talking trash. Krillin is so genre-savvy he chooses to break the fourth wall to point out that Punter is exactly the kind of character who will quickly be written out of the story. Krillin's daughter is a bit too young to be so genre-savvy, so she worries for her dad's safety. And that's when we get Yamcha's immortal line that Krillin is the strongest among Earthlings. I've been out in the wilderness. I've seen many a war fought over this one line. I've even taken up arms in the debate myself. If anyone cares to look up on what side I profess my loyalty, feel free, but I'm not going to bother and I honestly cannot remember. For those who aren't familiar, the issue comes down to Krillin versus Tenshinhan and the fact that whenever they are directly compared, Tenshinhan is shown to be superior. Tenshinhan has consistently fared better in tournaments, shown to have a higher battle power reading, and has even been a match for Goku, which is why some balk at Yamcha's assertion. At the same time, though, all those examples exist far in the past at this point, and people are certainly subject to change. Is Yamcha's line word of God? Or is it simply a nice man trying to build up a little girl's dad? Does Tenshinhan no longer count now that he's been written out of the story, or are we to assume that Krillin actually has managed to gain the upper hand? Is the Grand Elder's power-up more effective than training with the Lord of Worlds? Is it logical for Serious Face McMountain training to fall behind retired beach bum dad? Is Krillin's promotion a cynical play towards his greater popularity as a character? Those are very good questions, and they are all persuasive in their own ways, But they are questions you will have to answer yourself because I am simply not interested enough to question the legitimacy of whether or not it's logical for Krillin to have been able to do this. I will say that I wouldn't be surprised if his popularity has something to do with this line. However, it is a line that fits. Krillin has been more than solidified as the normal guy of this particular group. That's why he's been given so many anxious and self-deprecating lines over the last several chapters. He's the only one who's not an alien or a robot. Never mind that all the other normal guys who used to make up the majority of the fighting cast have to be shoved under the rug to make that happen. You are unique, Krillin. You're unique. You're the weak link. So, let's throw him a bone. Call him the strongest Earthling, let him knock around a one-shot character, let him enjoy life for a minute, he's earned it. Match 2 pits Ma Jr. against Shin, the mysterious, mohawked Trunks replacement dude. The announcer extols Ma Jr.'s tournament-destroying match of old, but no one recognizes him except as that guy from the Cell games because, as I've hammered into the ground, these people are hopeless. The match, however, fails to live up to the announcer's hype. Shin answers a question that Piccolo never asks, and before he can say, "Get out of my head!" Piccolo forfeits the match, telling Goku that this guy is on an entirely different level. It might seem a bit odd given how common telepathy is. I mean, Jackie Chun reaches into someone's mind in the first tournament we ever see. Piccolo's done it. But we get a little peek into Shin's head, who realizes that the person he was up against used to be this planet's god, and so has intuited to a degree who Shin is. Moments later, Piccolo confronts Shin, asking him if he's the Grand Kaio. Kibito, the bigger of the pair, corrects him. Shin is the Kaioshin. Piccolo freaks out. I think this scene does a better job than any of demonstrating that God was lying through his teeth when he said he would be nothing but a power-up, and that Piccolo's personality would remain dominant. I mean, seriously, which character refuses even to use honorifics while addressing gods, and who simpers in the presence of the heavenly hierarchy? This is God. This is God wearing a Piccolo costume. But anyway, that's the reveal. Shin is an undercover deity using a godly in-joke as an alias who has entered the tournament for the purpose of combating a great evil. Not to be confused with Shen, an undercover deity using a godly in-joke as an alias who has entered the tournament for the purpose of combating a great evil, and who is the person Shin is talking to right now. Jeez, we already had a Kami and a Kame and a Game. If that's not confusing enough, Piccolo's response to all of this god talk is a little overwhelming. There is a lot being thrown out at once, and if you didn't think I could take a single line of dialogue and analyze it for the rest of the episode, well, you clearly weren't paying attention to the disclaimer at the beginning. I can't help but think this section is so awkward because Toriyama was deferring to the animated adaptation. If so, it was a mistake. I've mentioned it a few times, but the animated version adds in a mini-arc between Cell and Buu, where Goku meets other gods in the Kaio hierarchy, a storyline that had wrapped up a few weeks before this chapter hit the streets. Toriyama included one of those characters, the Southern Kaio, in a tiny cameo not long before those episodes aired. And he definitely designed the Dai, or Grand Kaio, who plays a major role in that storyline. Now Toriyama is basically stepping over all of those characters to introduce an even higher tier. And that results in this loopy narrative Piccolo spins to explain all of this. There are the 4 Kaio, and then there's the Grand Kaio who presides over them, and this guy is above even that. If you're only following along with Toriyama's Dragon Ball, this is practically a word salad, name-dropping characters who were never going to be seen, and not even going to be referenced ever again. Who cares if this guy's above the Grand Kaio? Who even is that? I have to imagine there was some corporate politics at play here. That Toriyama wanted to introduce a new god character but wanted it to be his own god character. It could simply be because he, perhaps rightly, realized that the Grand Kaio lacked both the unfamiliarity and gravitas to fit into this role. I'm just guessing, but it is similar to his reaction to a 1995 movie character who was standing in his way of writing the same concept. So he created his own version, but in a way that left the door open for the possibility of that movie character existing. In this situation, I feel he might also have been persuaded or decided to play nice by making it easier to adapt. Incorporating these established filler characters into the Pantheon ensured that Toei wouldn't have to make any changes when they got around to animating this material as an episode. Likewise, nor would they be made to look stupid having their storyline partially or totally retconned out of existence immediately after it was told. At least Dr. Frappe was several years old before Dr. Gero was created, so he'd had the chance to fade into distant memory. But while these concessions combined with the additional material cause this dialogue to make more sense in the animated series, it doesn't work here. Before I continue ranting, let's take a look at Kaioshin from an etymological standpoint so we understand who he is. Kaio literally means World King, or as it is sometimes officially translated, Lord of Worlds. As Kaio-sama was created to be superior to Kami-sama, the nomenclature makes sense. The latter is a planetary god, so the former is titled to indicate jurisdiction over many worlds. In fact, as I've said, Kaio refers to himself as the ultimate god as recently as the end of the Cell arc, despite the Frieza arc clarifying that he is not in charge of all worlds, but simply the worlds of the Northern Galaxy. The aforementioned cameo of the Southern Kaio implies the existence of at least two others, and the Grand Kaio fulfills some nebulous role over them. Kaioshin literally means World King God. He is the god over the Kaio, the god of the gods. And for completion's sake, Kibito is a truncated form of Tsukibito, which means attendant, as that is the role he fills to Kaioshin. So with that out of the way, I'm not buying it. This has nothing to do with my opinion of Kaioshin as a character, which we'll explore once we actually get to know him. But this is the point where I begin to roll my eyes at how many levels of God there are in this series. Discounting the Northern and Southern Kaio since we've already met them, this dialogue confirms the idea of 4 new gods at 3 different levels at the exact same time. It is the metaphysical equivalent of the ultimate power-up tennis matches we've already seen quite enough of. There are only so many times a writer can hype something as the new greatest thing before we don't buy it anymore. And this is even worse. At least the message of Dragon Ball's combat is and always has been that there's always someone stronger, there's always room to improve. So even though Toriyama's pulling things out of his ass, there is an internal consistency to it. But from an in-universe perspective, the hierarchy of gods should be an established, fairly immutable structure. Toriyama tries to smooth this over by having Piccolo say it was a level he's only heard rumors of, and Kaio admitting he's never met the Kaioshin. This is not too dissimilar from the previous tactic of adding downgrading retronyms, such as God becoming God of Earth, and Lord of Worlds becoming Lord of the Northern Worlds. But the fact remains, you can't keep adding more gods on top without making Kaio look like an idiot. You could get away with creating additional co-equal Kaio. If he's sharing the top spot, it doesn't technically invalidate what he said. And if you really want to reach, you could possibly argue that he wouldn't be counting the gods he worships. As in, say I'm a Christian and I claim that I make the absolute best pizzas. I'm not really taking into account the possibility that my omnipotent creator would probably be better. Again, it's a reach, but it's there. But no matter how you look at it, the existence of a Grand Kaio is a problem, especially when he does jack all and only serves to confuse the narrative and invalidate Kaio's previous statements. The too many gods problem is indeed put into sharp relief by introducing 4 new gods at once, as well as this bizarre leapfrog over an entire godly tier, but it would be an issue regardless. All this does is further highlight it. Toriyama uses new gods as a crutch and he freely admits it. I always turn to God in times of trouble. Gods and aliens and other unknown beings like that make it easy to craft the story. After all, gods can do practically anything. And we're not even out of the original series yet. This quote was made in a book released in 2016, after Toriyama had added even more gods to Dragon Ball's revival and would continue to do so afterwards. But don't mistake this criticism as my annoyance at that retroactively seeping back to this arc. I've always felt this was the moment it got out of hand. The quote simply demonstrates that Toriyama is aware of it, and its use here highlights a major problem with this story arc. There's little room left for Dragon Ball to maneuver. Or, as a lot of fans tend to word it, the series has a problem with power creep. This is certainly not the first time I've made this argument, and I can guarantee it won't be the last. Dragon Ball is a series that is built on the concept of escalation, but the more it escalates, the fewer directions there are to go. The early Dragon Ball world is such an open, expansive place, and it's easy to understand why Son Goku is so excited to explore it. There are new adventures around every corner, and as the Muten Roshi says, there's always someone stronger. Until there isn't. Goku is the strongest person on the planet. He's even stronger than God. Where do you go? Aliens. Yeah, maybe other planets have stronger people. Maybe Goku is one of those people and that's why he's so strong. But then, he becomes even stronger than those aliens. He's stronger than the new, better god he trains with to become stronger than the aliens. He's stronger than the strongest of the aliens. Gohan is stronger than the technology based on Goku's strength and skill. Now, where else is there to go? Toriyama has built up so many walls that the one remaining normie in the group, the described strongest Earthling, far stronger than God, prays to God not to be paired against anybody he knows because he can't measure up. The story has capped all of these other categories from being viable competition, but as Toriyama says, gods can do anything. He doesn't have to come up with a justification for why a new god is so strong. He is because he's a god. So more gods on top of the gods who are on top of the gods who are on top of the gods. The entire universe is becoming too cramped. Worse yet, introducing Shin as the biggerest and betterest god feels largely unnecessary except to justify one minor point of suspense. These power cap problems infest Dragon Ball from multiple angles to be sure. It creates a challenge for introducing new good guys as well as new bad guys. But Kaioshin is not the bad guy, and he's ultimately not going to be anybody with a major combative role. Toriyama does, however, introduce Shin and Kibito as red herrings, that they could be threats themselves. That mystery holds for all of 4 chapters, but it is effective at grabbing our attention. After that attention is sufficiently grabbed, though, Shin's role becomes that of the Herald, the character who alerts the heroes to the quest. That is the same basic function Trunks serves in the Cell arc, but intentionally or not, Toriyama adhering too close to that mold doesn't serve the story as well in this case. Trunks does not need to be a Super Saiyan in order to bring the news of imminent mechanical destruction. Like Kaioshin, he is a herald, and a herald can be anybody. It doesn't require great strength to say, "Hey guys, there's bad stuff coming." And I have seen many complain that Trunks enters that story as a god of death, only to immediately fall into line with everyone else and accomplish very little. However, his effortless killing of Frieza contrasts his ineffectiveness at dealing with the problem in his time to demonstrate how deadly this next threat is. Killing Frieza positions him as at least an equal to Goku to show that Goku has no chance how he is right now. For a time travel story especially, such an example is important because the bad guys don't yet exist and therefore can't demonstrate their efficacy themselves. That is where Trunks comes in. Take this future threat seriously because I am living proof that you need to. But Kaioshin arrives to deliver news of a current threat. While it likewise demonstrates urgency having a god above gods worry over a villain, this situation doesn't quite necessitate the same roundabout way of establishing a threat. Kaioshin can and ultimately will prove the threat is serious by simply taking them to the threat. So Trunks is strong partly to generate suspense, but also because he needs to be in order to fulfill a narrative function. Kaioshin is creepy and mysterious and causes Piccolo to wet his pants for little other reason than to drum up mystery around this character. Pay attention to this guy because he is enigmatic and Piccolo can't even bring himself to fight him. It works in the moment to build interest and speculation, but as there's ultimately no need for him to ever be crazy strong, putting him into the Trunks role doesn't quite fit. Because of that, he has to straddle a very odd line. He has to be pants-wettingly terrifying, but he has to ultimately be weaker than the heroes. Otherwise, why would he need their help? So, how is it possible for him to be both? Cast him as an upper god. Toriyama is correct. A god can do practically anything. A god can also be practically anything. Since Toriyama rarely goes out of his way to define what exactly gods can do, they can maintain this nebulous quality of intimidation. We see God effortlessly flick Goku away, but then see him cower in front of the great King Enma, and hear Enma say that he somehow took care of Raditz. Despite the fact that we never see Enma do anything besides sit at a desk, it leaves an impression. Likewise, Piccolo falls into his god characteristics because seeing him unable to confront Shin tells us that Shin is to be taken seriously. So in a way, Piccolo becomes the herald for the herald. For now, though, we see that the typically polite Shin does not seem to be too enamored with the upcoming combatant Spopovich. Next time, we'll see what's up with him as he enters the ring to do battle against Videl. Thanks for watching. Take a moment to appreciate these fine people whose donations help keep this channel running. Take a moment to appreciate your fine self for watching and engaging. And then take a moment to check out the first episode of the all-new Mighty Morphin Zyurangers to find out how another Japanese media juggernaut made its way to the West. See you next time!